Share the screen. All right, can everybody see my screen all right? Yes? Cool. Welcome to the September regular meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Board. Hereby called to order. We do have a quorum present. It is 3:05 p.m. on September 28th. High level perspective on kind of the focus of today's meeting is we're in budget process at the county, and this body, I'm asking to fulfill the statutory responsibility of helping us apply for the Rural County Grant Program. Application is due on Sunday or maybe Saturday. So we will be looking at that, and then we will also be looking at economic diversification TRT priorities for 2023. And then I will kind of go over a little bit of where we are at with previously allocated funds and what has happened this year so far to inform all of the above. I'm calling from Vernal, Utah, from the Utah Tourism Conference here in their Innovation Hub, which is a co-working space that actually the state Rural Innovation Grant helped to fund. So it's cool to me to see a resource that we don't really have in our community besides the Mark co-working space. And I was just able to drop in and do this meeting from here. I am not going rafting or mountain biking, which everybody else who at the conference is doing at the moment, but that's because I love my job. So we'll get started here with some conflicts of interest, disclosures, or ex parte communication. Are there any that those present would like to disclose? Seeing none, are there any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, let's just do a quick round of introductions. Does everybody know everybody here? I think everybody knows everybody. I will just state everybody who's present for the record. In the chambers, it looks like we've got Rob Walker, Jasmine Duncan, Rachel Bartlett, and then online, myself, Carly Castle, Emily Campbell, Forrest Rogers, Ben Alter, Mary McGann, and Karen Guzman-Newton. Let's go right into it. Ben, can you get us started? Ben has been knee deep in grants all summer and fall, and I want him to give us a quick catch up as to where that is at the moment.
Hi, everyone. If you work in the county building or I saw you in the past few days, sorry, it may have gotten you sick. I don't know if it's COVID or bronchitis right now, so I'm working. I keep testing negative, but I'm at home. Sorry if my voice is a little scratchy. Also sorry, and then I'll stop apologizing, that the slides I'm about to show you are really boring in terms of color scheme, but oh, can I share my screen? Can someone enable me? But taking Forrest's advice, I've worked very hard to not put anything in the PowerPoint that I will also tell you. So hopefully there will be a mixture of information without me just reading from slides. So on that note, I have just a small grants update. Let's see, I'm hoping someone can give me a thumbs up if they're seeing a nice, beautiful image that says grants update. Okay, great, thank you. So, so right now we have 3 primary grant programs that I have oversight of. This doesn't include Rachel's hard work on the special event and community event grant programs. So if there are any questions about those, I would defer to her, but she's doing a great job with those. So if you look to the left here, the Moab Tourism Grant here, this was kind of, the idea came from the Travel Council Advisory Board from Daniel Loveridge. His idea was to sponsor, or sorry, rather support businesses in town who are offering tourism-focused services, visitor-focused services, but are a little mom and pop, a little smaller, may need a leg up on Main Street, so to speak. So our total fund for that grant program was $55,000. We funded 7 organizations in town, and we were able to fund all of their grant requests to the full extent that they requested them, which was about $5,000 each, and so we learned a lot of good lessons on how to make this program better. Those checks have either been cut or are being cut this week. So we're really excited to see those dollars going to the community. On the right here, our flood relief emergency grant, a bit self-explanatory, but a shout out to Jasmine and Carly on the board who have worked really hard to help us get these funds into the community. There's not a third member, say Daniel, Brendan, and Trish. Okay, so yeah, just on this board, Carly and Jasmine, thank you both. There's more work to be done. The flood relief emergency grant has a total pot of $250,000. And as I put in this bottom note here, we are still reviewing applications. This 167,000 number is going to increase. But these are the businesses we funded so far. And I'm going to talk just a bit more about that in a moment. And the last thing here is this total pot for the Star Business Grant. In the last county commission meeting, the county commission approved us taking $500,000 out of reserves and essentially doubling the pot that was originally set aside for this grant to make it 1 million. The reason you see 46,160 here is because this body at its last meeting approved that we add $46,160, the remaining sum from our rural county grant workforce housing support line item to support this grant. So this grant is just a little over $1 million strong, with at least $46,160 going towards projects that support workforce housing. The ultimate sum that's supporting workforce housing is actually greater than that. The STAR grant, the STAR grants, the committee has finished evaluating them. They're right now in legal review. The grants by nature, because the sums that folks are asking for and because the projects are so versatile, it's taking us some time to get through legal review, but we're hoping to make those announcements in the next week or two, because we do have a good idea of who we'd like to fund and at what rate, and it's very exciting. On that note, so a brief note on the flood relief emergency grant. If you weren't around for the emergency commission meeting that approved this grant, basically what we have here, these two left columns are where the monies are coming from. So the total pot for the flood relief emergency grant is $250,000. If you add all three of these numbers, you get $250,000. So these two left columns here represent funds we've already allocated. Businesses, based on whether they serve majority visitors or majority locals, are funded either from the Tourism Promotion Fund or the Economic Diversification Fund. Based on the funds that we've sent out, most businesses that are needing that flood relief are falling into the tourism promotion bucket, which makes sense because, as we all saw, so much of that damage wrought on Main Street hit some of our hotels, shops, and restaurants hardest, and they are visitor facing. So that's why you're seeing more of those funds come from the Tourism Promotion Fund rather than the Economic Diversification Fund. And then this right here, sorry, this graph is not the clearest, but this right here just shows us how many funds we have left to disperse from either tourism promotion or economic diversification. It depends on how the business falls into our categorization. But the bottom line is we still have $82,000 to dispense from this fund, and we still have applications we're reviewing. So next time this body meets, I'll be able to do a full report on exactly how many funds we dispersed to support flood relief. Do you have any questions about the flood relief grant program, as well as this the Moab Tourism Grant Program. I can go back to that first one real quick. Yeah,
Ben,
go ahead,
this
Ollie.
is Karen.
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead, Karen. Yeah, go ahead.
No,
No, you're fine. Go ahead,
I
Karen.
was just going to ask, do we have a list of, or has it been distributed yet with the Star Business Grant recipients?
So we're not sending out a list just yet, because while we're pretty sure that we know what projects and businesses we want to fund, if we get a red flag from legal, we don't want to tell anyone we're going to fund them and then say, actually, we have to go back and say, we can't fund this, we have to change things. So I'm being careful with that. And also all of the committee members and myself included signed an NDA about the review process. Once we start getting the awards, obviously we will announce the organizations that get those awards, because they are tax dollars, and so the public has every right to know. But right now I'm keeping that list close to the chest just until I'm sure we can make those awards final and publicize it. Does that make sense?
Yep. And is that the same case with the tourism grants as well?
No, I can totally send a list around with the tourism and the flood relief grant recipients. Absolutely, I can do that after this. I honestly just didn't have time to throw it together today, but yes, I can circulate that if you'd like to see.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much.
Of course.
A similar follow-up, Ben, is of the flood relief grants, who's actually received, how much of that money's actually gone out the door versus just been allocated?
Let's see. I can see here. I have to look at something a little private. Flood relief grants. Let's see. Of that number, we've sent out. So the grants are coming in halves. You get one half, then you get the other half once you finish your reporting. So of good question. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So of 19, excuse me, out of 17 organizations that have been awarded a flood relief grant, all but 4 have gotten their first check. And since the max award is $20,000, the max grant that folks have seen so far is up to 10,000, or as low as 2,500. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's useful.
Okay,
and then that application window has closed, right?
It has closed, yes. Although right now it doesn't seem like we're gonna exhaust the funds, so there could be discussion about if we wanted to extend it, but I don't really think it's going to be necessary.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that we've addressed the damages. It just means that per the formulation of the program and the request he's received, that we might not exhaust the funds. But
correct.
Right. Okay.
Cool. And then the last thing I'll show everyone is just some stuff we're getting excited about when we can reveal the STAR grant information. So again, all of the grants are in legal review. So I'm just adding this proposed here just in case something has to change. But looking across, different economic multiplier categories, just easy things we saw that we're excited about. 15 of the projects are going to propose construction or infrastructure modifications. 5 of the projects are going to support workforce housing. 13 propose hiring at least 1 new person, in most cases more, and 29 propose local collaboration. And this ranges from, working with one person in a volunteer capacity to gain their expertise or their buy-in to creating that economic multiplier effect where you're contracting work out or you're paying someone else for a service. And so we're really excited to see that stuff. And then what that translates into dollars looks something like this. And I'll just add that these dollar amounts here are just the dollars that we are going to fund the projects. It's not necessarily how much the applicants are going to spend on their projects, which in many cases is much more. So I think that's my last slide. Oh yeah, that's it.
Quick question.
Any questions about the, oh yeah, please.
How does the distribution among those 4 different types match what you and August may have anticipated?
That's a really good question. So I will say that our grant evaluation committee thought really carefully about these projects. And so I'll say that we were definitely thinking we would see more projects that proposed hiring someone new. I think that's definitely something we were hoping for, especially because when I was doing my outreach, I was trying to show folks on how if you were trying to bring someone new in, whether it was creating a new role in hiring or hiring for an existing role, paying at 110% of the industry's median wage would not only garner you the ability to access this grant, but also the State Ready grant, and it'd be really advantageous for you. We didn't see as many as I thought we would. And I'll add that in the committee's review, a lot of these things that we're going to fund, we're probably going to not fund the hiring aspect, because while we did get a lot of folks proposing new hires as part of their project or as their total project, in most cases, the sustainability plan they proposed was not convincing enough to the committee, or it was non-existent to the point where we were concerned, funding this, is it just going to be for 1 year and then the money's going to disappear? So we also expected, I expected more workforce housing projects, simply because when we were popularizing the grant, everyone was asking about this. But we actually did not receive that many. And let's see, I think we're proposing to support 5. I think there were 8 total. So there were 3 that are probably not going to be funded, but I still thought we'd see more than that. And then the local collaboration part, I think, Forrest, you kind of drive home other questions in that there are a lot better ways to quantify this. The local collaboration pot was very much like a catch-all that I was using with our grant evaluators, just as kind of like a grants at a glance thing in their handbook. But there are way more ways to quantify that local collaboration aspect. So in a way, I was surprised that most projects kind of proposed, local collaboration. But at the same time, I would like to drill into more of, how different projects kind of propose that, and if we could separate them into different categories against where our expectations were. But overall, I'd say, we didn't come up with formal numbers before we went into this, because we were just so, we'd never really done this before and had almost no idea what to suspect. But I think the workforce housing projects and the new hire projects, I was surprised. I thought that we'd get more. And I'll say we only got 50 projects in general, maybe it was 51. I thought we'd get more project proposals in general. I was prepared for a lot more. There was a lot more interest and a lot of folks who reached out who didn't end up applying, and I worked really hard to try and bring them into the fold. And so I think the next thing for us, as we did with the tourism grant, is to figure out what could be better about the publicization of this. How can we define the criteria and the goals a little bit better? Because there's definitely stuff to be learned here. But overall, we got fewer applications than I thought we would.
But it is encouraging that 3 of those 4 loose categories are basically capacity building and infrastructure building in the community. And that's reaffirming and reassuring. And if these results, once you're finalized with all of the awards and distributions, are known in the community, it will only increase the probability that you will get more engagement from people, whether you're giving away money or not.
I love that, and I couldn't agree more, and I thank you for that. I mean, we're really excited to announce these grants, not just for the winners, but just to get folks excited that, you know, even if we don't have the same grant in this form next year, we're going to do something like this. And we got a lot of great ideas and good excitement. We really just want to like keep that groundswell. So we'll be looking to this board when we make announcements to help us just kind of help us get the message out there of what this is all about, and that this is not just a one-off thing. So thank you for that. And there's definitely more information on that coming, but we plan to make a thing of it. Anyone else have questions about any grant things?
I was kind of just wondering if any of the local collaboration ones also were part of another category, or is that all just
Yeah.
totally...
So these categories are not mutually exclusive. Some projects fit into 2 or 3 categories. Let's see here. I can do a little stop share and tell you that we are looking at, in terms of like total number of projects that we're looking to fund, with our $1 million and change, it's going to be not 29 projects, but it's going to be 36 projects total. Okay, well, I'll let you all get on with it and not unmute myself so I'm not coughing. Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to shoot me questions over email and stuff. And Karen, if you want to send me an email reminder, I'd be glad to send around those lists of grant recipients from the other 2 programs later.
Thanks so much, Ben. For those that maybe aren't quite aware, Ben and I have been doing a lot of business travel this month. We were both in Oklahoma City last week at the International Economic Development Council annual conference. I was at the Outdoor Recreation Summit the week before that. Now I'm here. And so we are running on fumes a little bit this month. So please excuse Ben's sickness, because I'm not surprised that he's run out of juice. I somehow am not sick, but I'm certainly exhausted. So let's move on. Next, I'm going to go over some kind of context for the conversation today. So going to look at some of the strategic priorities we set around this time last year, look at how that translated to budget and program spend over the last 2 years or so, and kind of revisit what we'd like to keep prioritizing, what feels like needs to be elevated. I do have the prioritization exercise we did last year. So we could go through something like that as well. But kind of all up for discussion. I'm going to get started by looking at that brainstorm from last year. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see this all right? Yeah, so as a reminder, last year, the Economic Development Advisory Council, Diversification Advisory Council, before it was all smushed into one organization, we went through this kind of 2-part exercise where everybody on the board kind of threw a couple ideas out there, just kind of brainstorm. So we came up with 18 as kind of various priorities, and then we assigned, I believe everybody got 5 dots basically to assign. And that kind of helped us get a top 10 of priorities, which became this program. So for the sake of just kind of getting the brain juices going, in bottom to top order, ideas that were considered included increasing agricultural use near Green River, water supply development, rezones to open land for residential lots, incentive assistance to initiate rezone process, providing housing stipend to essential workers, providing operating expenses to local affordable housing staff, marketing grant, marketing available workforce development programs, direct cash transfers, kind of an outdoor like recreation co-op, community kind of facility for the local community, purchase of real estate for anything of our priorities, whether that be housing development, childcare, light industrial, small manufacturing, childcare grant, an apprenticeship program, business expansion planning services, a grant focused on seed funding for entrepreneurs, small business incubator, scholarships for businesses to elevate the skills of their employees, expansion grant and rotating loan fund, just kind of what became the STAR grant basically, and master planning and more data basically. So then we looked at the top 10 and went through a ranking process in which each of the board members ranked each program based on its like speed from beginning to impact, the level of the intensity of impact, how broadly this is going to impact our community in terms of reach, in terms of basically end user value, the need of it, the total cost, and the ability to have a long-term impact. That got averaged into this number here, and we sorted it by the lower number being higher value. So that got us, the master plan was the number 1 priority. Expansion grant, which became the STAR grant, was the number 2 priority. And then the entrepreneurship grant, business incubator, et cetera, et cetera. But basically these top 2 ended up in our actual budget for this year. And so I'm going to switch to that tab. 1 second. Sorry, I have too many tabs open. Okay. So on the TRT side, that became this $65,000 line item for an economic development master plan. This $500,000 line item that got augmented to this $1,046,160 number. Part of what was in there, we ended up putting money in for a workforce development program and kind of marketing our diversification programs, as well as local business technical assistance staff. So a quick update in terms of how that actually got spent this year. We haven't spent any money out of this master planning bucket yet, as has been often discussed throughout this year. We're working towards that process. We decided to do RFQs. We're still getting those ready to be distributed, but had some really good meetings in Oklahoma City at the International Economic Development Council conference, where I met about 5 potential consultants who would be really good to send that to. So I'm feeling very good about that, at least beginning this year. So I anticipate we'll spend some of that money, maybe not all of it. For this line, I anticipate that we're going to fully spend that amount. Everything's been approved top to bottom. In terms of workforce development, we've had a lot of ideas, but it's certainly just simply we haven't had the bandwidth to put time and energy into it. So I don't anticipate us spending any significant amount of that money this year. And then in terms of this marketing line, initially I was skeptical we'd be able to, initially I thought it was going to be, you'd spend money for for example, what we did with the childcare program, where we had roundtables with the community, spent money on pizza and facilities, and that helped us kind of market our programs and develop them. However, that didn't end up costing us very much. And instead, I think that what's going to be really useful expenditure of that money this year is basically working with some production partners, some content creators, to help tell the story of the STAR grants and the other grants we've created this year. Think a 5-minute high quality video that has a compelling storyline to actually tell the story of the program, who's involved, who's seeing impacts and what that impact looked like outside of a spreadsheet.
August, are you open to some questions now, or would you rather we held them to the end?
This one. I think I want to just quickly go over everything, and then we can kind of dive into it. And I think I do want to keep the priority of today's conversation forward-looking in terms of, do we like this kind of program and continue it, or does it need more support and capacity? And then we'll go from there. But yeah, so please hold questions. So for that, I'm anticipating that we're going to contract with the video production company to put together that piece of content that will then debut at the Canyonlands Business Summit next February. We'll have legislators there, and we can it'll be part of our, not only like telling the public like what we're doing, but just telling the actual stories of these local businesses who are doing great stuff that we're just helping out carry out their dreams and visions. And that'll, I think, help us in the long run as we're pursuing the continuation of this allowable use from the state legislature, from DRT. And then lastly, when it comes to local business technical assistance staff, the MOU between USU and Grant County is still in legal review, although we anticipate that being cleared by the end of the year. That's an annual expense, the $100,000 is a max. So I don't think we will spend all of that to the end of this year, but I anticipate that full amount being utilized next year as that relationship continues over time. Going to talk about future in just a second. I'm going to do a quick review of our rural county grant expenditures for fiscal year 21. We spent 65 grand on business grants, 10 grand towards the Mark co-working space, and 15 grand towards Moab community childcare, with a small contribution for the AmeriCorps Vista, with a small surplus. Ben, did you know if we ever spent that surplus? That was a question I meant to ask you earlier. Or is that still available to us?
Remind me what you mean by the surplus. Do you mean like our required match?
No, there was $1,700 that basically was unspent from fiscal year 21. And I don't remember if that got baked into our plans for this year.
No, I don't think that was used actually. So
okay.
I was actually aware of that until you mentioned it.
Okay. For this year, this represents our initial request from last year, which was kind of scattershot approach. This is the adjusted amount we ended up allocating money towards and what's been expended so far. So we fully expended everything and have submitted our report for the rural county grant for this year. And then as a reminder, we applied for $600,000, got $300,000 for the Skyline Arch apartment complex in Arroyo Crossing. So I think now is probably a good time for questions. So I have these two tabs that are going to be a good workshop, or excuse me, these two tabs, the TRT tab and the Rural County Grant tab. That'll be a useful kind of visualization of thinking through next year's spend. And before we go too far, let me just make sure I have the stuff here. The end goal of today is to put together basically that priority for next year in the absence of the strategic planning process that we've been talking about. So it's not going to be perfect, but it'll get us moving forward. And There's basically two documents. One is this prioritized list of expenditures for the diversification piece of TRT that we'll submit to the Travel Council Board that they will incorporate into their recommendation to the County Commission for all TRT expenditures. So for reference there, there's just under $1 million available from TRT for economic diversification that we anticipate to collect next year, and therefore is what we're budgeting for calendar year 23. And then basically there's just an identical document for rural county grants that we can put the numbers and priorities in that we can approve today so that we can have Ben move forward with that application by the end of the week. I think as it pertains to rural county grant, obviously it's pretty flexible, changing during the year. Last year, we drastically changed kind of the priorities. So I think it's less important to like obsess over numbers and exact programs, but maybe kind of just get a sketch of what priorities we want for next year. And then somewhat similar for the TRT piece on the economic diversification side. My inclination for today is to look at what we prioritized last year and kind of reflect on that top 10 priority, and then potentially add additional programs or suggestions or additional capacity or focus areas for next year outside of the TRT Rural County Grant focus, and just have a discussion about the overall priorities, and then can kind of dig in from there. So I think that's my cue to say, let's have a discussion. For anybody who'd like to have any questions about kind of where we're at process-wise today, or just any questions in general or discussion.
August, just so you know, you're showing a very small window. I don't know if
I know, I'm trying.
Size window. Okay.
I'm trying to get the right
My
one.
question or comment is short. It's more wondering if we're going to spend money on that program marketing, I'd love to have that understanding of why the initial grant wasn't as successful in getting the number of applicants that we anticipated, so that we could make sure that any further marketing and communication is reflecting those learnings, those changes. So I just wanted to make sure that our timing would work out to be able to sequence those.
Can I say something? So Emily, can you clarify, when you're talking about fewer applicants than we expected, are you talking about the diversification grant or the tourism marketing grant?
Oh, no, diversification. Sorry, I mean, maybe I got those two mixed up.
No, you're totally fine.
Okay.
The one thing I'll say, and Forrest just totally put me on the spot there, but the one thing about the number of applicants we received is that I don't know how many more we could have handled. I think we received a good amount. I don't know if we received too few, but we were also being told by the SBDC that we were working with to produce the program that we were going to receive essentially 6 times more than we received. And I had that number in my mind more from a place of fear than a place of like estimating what the community interest was. So I definitely think where you're going is right, in that I do think we want to increase the applications we get for the future, and we are going to work on learning why we didn't get as many as we expected. But I also think our expectation number may have not been just totally on the money, but that doesn't mean what you're saying is not important. And in regards to the Moab, the tourism grant, if you are interested in going back to, and if not, I can send it around, but if you go back to the September 6th commission agenda, when the commission approved all 7 of those grants, in the agenda summary, I included a bunch of information that I gathered from the committee members on why we probably didn't get enough applicants, what could be improved about the program. So we've already done a lot of thinking about that with the prior grant, which I think it's in much more dire need of marketing, because we were undersubscribed essentially. So I definitely want to improve on both of the grants, but I'll just say with the STAR grant, I don't think that we were too undersubscribed, but it's something I'm thinking about.
Great. Thanks for the clarification, Ben.
Anytime.
Yeah, and I think the follow-up there is when I'm thinking about the marketing money for this year, because it is left, it has been allocated for that kind of subject matter. Just want it to be used for something useful this year. And I think that, it's marketing almost for the future of the program. It's almost more of a reporting than a marketing of the program, but it's still storytelling of the programs that we're creating. And there's some really great video production outfits that I'm getting to know through the tourism side that I think would be really compelling, would be able to tell a very compelling story about where we're at, why we're doing this, and anchor that to some real humans who live in our community who are making a difference. That being said, probably the place to start is over here on this tab. Sorry, I'm trying to fit everything on this screen, but it's not really working that well. Let's try this now. So this is what came out of last year. I almost wonder if probably the best thing that we could start with is if everybody takes maybe 5 minutes to write down things that they saw this year that our office prioritized and took on, and would like to see that continued through next year. And any new programs that kind of haven't been discussed up to this point, or any new priorities, any new capacity, anything that you think would be good to see our office work on. And just take a couple minutes individually, and I'll do the same. And then we can come back and just kind of add it to this list from last year. Does that feel like a good first step here today?
I think that provides valuable context, especially for those of us who are new.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes, and then I'll come back. Does that? Let's go ahead and do that.
I guess, forgive me, but I don't see the list.
Sorry, Karen, I think you muted yourself.
Oh dear, sorry. I'm sorry, August. So the list is not showing for me, and I don't know. I'm overseas right now, so I don't know if it's a connectivity issue or, I can see all you guys, but I do not see. I just see the Moab Protect and Preserve logo.
Okay. What are other people seeing on their screens?
I'm seeing it. And August, maybe if you stop sharing and try resharing again, that might trigger the Zoom window for Karen.
Is that page that had the document for the priorities from last year a useful one, or would people like to see a different tab open for reference for this session?
I'm not sure that it is, this is Forrest. I'm not sure that that's as valuable as the quantification of priorities.
Okay.
And I say that because the top priority may be the least expensive of all those options. So it might be interesting for me to start with those and get a better sense of that, and know ballpark, what's the total amount of money that would be allocated for all those 8 or 9 priorities.
Yep. Okay. So I'll put up then this year's or maybe last year's spend, kind of the up-to-date information that can be useful, and then the total number that we have to work with. Does that sound good? So I'm just gonna open this Just give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out a way to display this in a useful way. Okay, this is good. Okay. All right, so on the left, I have kind of the full suite of programs that we applied for last year for the Rural County Grant. And on the right, we have everything that we budgeted and spent money on this year from the TRT, diversification component of TRT here. And then for reference, the total number of dollars that we have. The Rural County Grant amount is unchanged. So that 240 is unchanged. But the diversification amount is so just under $1 million.
Hey, August,
Yep,
can I make a comment that
comment away.
hopefully will be helpful? So I've been part of this for each of these last 2 years and the brainstorming sessions, and they're all really cool ideas. And what sort of has happened each year, it seems like, is, the difficulty of creating programs to use the money effectively and actually implement these is, not August's or, the person in this role before August's main job, and or other people on the staff. They have, a whole department to run and other things. And, we meet monthly, we talk, and, we've had some consensus around the issues, but then we kind of get to a point where we have to just allocate the money. And so the programs kind of get, we favor ones that are easier to allocate money to. I would suggest that we use a chunk of the money that we're going to get either for an entire full-time person or half-time person that could be focused on the Rural County Grant monies, and they could explore kind of how to implement a lot of these different ideas, and could kind of be essentially challenged with, how many of these can we sort of try to, plant in the ground, so to speak, to see if we can make some progress with them. So that's just like a thought I had. I wanted to throw out there for you, August, and everyone. I don't know if that's not helpful, but I think we ran into that problem the last few years, and so it's sort of like a meta comment around what we're doing.
I think that that's on the money, and I think that's the kind of feedback I'm hoping to get from this next 5 minutes or 10 minutes of kind of reflection is, maybe not like what's a million new program ideas, but given everything that's kind of happened in the last 2 years, what we've worked on, what's been successful, like what does each of y'all definitely want to see continued? What seems like it's not working? And what kind of resources, programs, capacity kind of do we need to kind of continue moving that forward? So I think that, Rob, I think that comment is very apt. But yeah, so like not necessarily programs, like also capacity and people and technology and often, I don't know, all of the things that could be considered. So I think now kind of that what's on the screen now. Karen, can you see my screen now at this point?
August, it's spinning. It says August has started sharing the screen, but it's just spinning out. So I'm trying to just go to our email and look at the list that we.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you go to that list, there is a document in that folder that's called CY23, as in calendar year 23 economic development funding priorities, I believe it's called. And we're just in the first sheet called overview. And you'll see the same information.
Or you could just email that tab to her or something, or also, Karen, I'm sure you could come up with a bigger list if you just started thinking right now.
Well, I have
spend your
one.
time on the council. You've got all the things that are on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just wondering, do we get to do, like a dream project? Because what I would like to see, and I don't know what kind of assessment was done with the county to figure out what sort of property they have. I mean, I really think we could have a lot more business opportunity if we had the land or the commercial properties in order to allow younger, newer people to start businesses, because there's not the space.
Yeah, so I think that's perfect. So I think what I would like us to do is then let's take until 4:05, so 8 minutes, for everybody to kind of reflect and these kinds of thoughts. I think Rob's thoughts and Karen's thought here. Let's write it all down, and then we'll do a share back at 4:05. Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
Okay. When we did this in person, I played the Jeopardy soundtrack, but I'm not going to do that to you this time. All right, everybody, it's 4:05. I hope everyone has a nice little list. Chambers, can y'all unmute yourselves? Just appreciate the muting during deliberation. Well, let's go in person first. I'll take notes, and we'll go from there. Rob, you want to go first?
Sure.
You can be our spokesperson.
Yeah. I think one thing we agreed on, which is sort of ties into some things, is building on what I was saying earlier was, let's try to recommend like ideas that we have a plan to implement in terms of like, is there a nonprofit in town that, like with childcare, that was easy for us to do. And whereas a lot of other ideas towards the end down to the wire, we kind of were like, we like this idea, we're not sure how to implement it. We worked with the land trust and gave them money for things, or the grant ideas. So I guess one big picture thing was we were talking about things like water conservation, and a lot could be talked about with that. But I think we should recommend ideas or require sort of almost like, well, how would you spend that money and how can we pull that off, as we're like a volunteer board, we're not like an organization that can do all this. So one thing we talked about was sort of like that idea of like for the lawns, like we can give people financial incentives. They can apply and say, here's the project I want to do. And then we can kind of pick which ones to fund. And they could use that money to sort of zero-scape. That was Jasmine's idea. What else have I forgot to mention? Yeah, I think I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, just being able to implement what we're talking about. So, well, maybe for instance, if we were going to do some kind of incentive for that type of project, you find a nonprofit who might implement it for you. Maybe Renda Moran or somebody like that who might be able to take that over, take the check, and then make it happen.
Like for instance, support for women-owned minority businesses. We go to Multicultural Center and say, here's a pot of money, we want to do this. Right. And what they'll do is they'll say, we're going to charge you a 15% administrative fee or something like that, but we will distribute this money and we will, do
and
it
grant
based on.
form to those qualifying.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, we've all, so we're between these two lists and the other list you had there, we have enough things. I think we could, we've obviously seen around like flood issues recently, and like, that's like probably a bigger issue that we can probably allocate money to, but.
And long term, I think I could see us continuing to support the childcare programs, because there's always going to be a need for that.
Yeah, I have some other ideas around that we can talk about like later. We can leave it as generic daycare grants now or something. But in my little world, I was thinking about, okay, what I could pitch to you all as like ideas. But why don't we let some of the newer members or other people speak, and we can always chime in later, August.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm going to go online and go to Forrest.
Who just received a phone call that I had to cancel. My apologies. I candidly have a hard time driving into the detail of the FY23 Rural Grant Part A. And I saw in the notes that some of those items are suggested to move. Some of those items and dollars allocated to those are suggested to move into the economic diversification budget. That's just in the notes for those. Frankly, I see the talking about the allocation of those, I guess it's 12 categories or 12 types of programs, as a little overwhelming. And just as you all identified, say, 4 different types of investments in the grant program, it seems to me that many of those items, for the purposes of the board, could be embedded in one of the 5 descriptions under economic diversification activity. Now, I'm saying this as a novice who have just spent some time walking through all of these spreadsheets. So I may not see the full and connected picture. And so I'm having a hard time making anything, providing any specifics other than just demonstrating my confusion and grasping at understanding how these all fit together. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, maybe August could say it too, but I think right now we're just sort of like, which are sort of priorities, or what things do you think that we should focus on with our upcoming batch of money we're going to get?
Well, Rob, thank you for that, helping me focus a little bit. It seems to me that the 5 categories that are under the 2022 economic diversification activity are the priorities into which many of those items, many of the itemized programs in the rural grant program fit. And it seems to me that the plan is essential. Continuing the grant program with available funding helps both businesses, and it elevates, or it confirms for people in the community that the county, the economic development team are approaching the growth and development of our local economy strategically with programs that actually help people and can, over time, result in measurable outcomes.
So what I've heard before, so I just want to reiterate, continuing that planning focus and continuing the STAR grant program with a long-term goal of ensuring that whatever the planning process produces gives us a good roadmap to ensure that we're doing good, effective work into the long run. Say that again, Rob.
One question is that, say that STAR grant program, that's from a different bucket than we've allocated. We didn't, for instance, we have a different bucket of money. That's that, like the priorities that Forrest is reading from are definitely like shared priorities, and we put some money to that, but like we didn't put any money to that $1 million thing. That's your guys' big county budget TRT money. So like, we
put 46,160 towards it.
We put 46,000. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that answers my question then. I wasn't sure like whether we should, sort of like.
Well, and so I should say that I do view this body as an advisor on, although statutorily it's explicit to focus on the Rural County Grant Program, but also the TRT money that is going towards economic diversification activities. And so, Forrest, your kind of question about what you were reading in the notes from kind of these, if I can get my mouse somewhere useful, these programs, most of these were from last year and was kind of Ben and I's kind of best guess of like a kind of a bucket of programs. And then a lot of these that got zeroed out last year ended up, like business support grants, ended up becoming programs funded by the TRT part from the economic diversification carve out of TRT. So these are all, potential priorities. They're just kind of divided up by funding source at the moment. And so I kind of left these on there. I could have just as well gotten rid of all the zeroed out ones, but those were things that we had considered in the past. And so I figured it was worth kind of leaving it up there.
Well, this is helpful. Thank you for taking time to educate me on that.
It's all good.
But, I guess I will say I guess I will say that the things that the department is doing seem to be the right things to be doing at this time and up for evaluation within the context of a new strategic plan. The one thing I'm particularly interested in is the degree to which we can build on the relationship with USU, find ways to provide technical skills, trade skills if that's how you want to define them, and to reach into the high school so that people graduating from Grand County High School are aware of the options locally or through distance learning, and through apprenticeships or internships within the community. I think that long-term is going to help the community in a number of ways. First of all, it may keep young people who don't yet know what they're going to do after graduation, but who clearly aren't going to make a living working for, working for the fast food restaurants or working in the hotels, and really want to have a career. I think that's a real opportunity, and it seems to me that USU is really well positioned to work with the high school in that effect.
Awesome. So I've captured that as kind of continuing the workforce development partnership with USU, which seems like a perfect time to call Megan to the stand.
I was wondering if that was going to come up. So I actually have apprenticeship programs or developed apprenticeship programs as a list of mine. I've been exploring that for the past year, both in Grand and San Juan counties. Grand County is specifically, as I've met with businesses, is specifically excited about that prospect and wanting that. I've also discussed that with Leanna, and she sees education kind of moving in that direction as well. And so she's very open to that. So I think that that would be a great option. The reality of it is setting up an apprenticeship program can be a little bit expensive for businesses. So giving them an option to apply for additional funding so that they can get that properly set up, or they can have the resources they need to do that would be huge. To do the pre-apprenticeship programs with the high school so that we keep our youth in our communities would be another huge asset. And to be able to have them go straight on to USU there in Moab, so we're not losing our workforce, would be another huge asset as well. So I have that listed. While I was meeting with businesses for the STAR grant, I noticed that business education was needed some help a little bit. Knowledge of finance and how to do business finance was a little scary. Doing their P&Ls and stuff like that was required. Definitely something I think that needs to be a little focused on. What I think was happening is because Moab is a relatively busy area, when you have a lot of funds coming in, you can kind of bypass a lot of that. And but when things slowed down, some of that was shown pretty heavily in some of the businesses, and to have that knowledge and know how to put together a P&L and have those ready for your businesses is going to be important, especially the ones that want to go after grants now that they've gotten a little bit of a taste of that. So having some business education and a system set up that's ongoing, I think is going to be important for those businesses. When we're talking about opening up younger or having younger generation open up businesses, that'd be huge. There's nothing worse than have somebody, and August and I experienced this summer, handing somebody some money without the education to be able to back that and to sustain that business. And so I just think that's super important. And we saw a lot of examples where that was much needed as we did the STAR grant this summer. I think an incubator space would be hugely beneficial in San Juan or Grand County, with a commercial kitchen. That would be both for the food trucks. I also think that would be great to influence a co-op for food for those food trucks, so we can reduce the costs, the food coming in that they're purchasing. So hopefully that can help maintain, because the margins on restaurants in general, as small food trucks, have that same issue. What else do I have? A business mentorship program. That was something that was asked for multiple times while I met with businesses for the STAR grant. Is it would be really great to have a big business mentorship program where they could lean on somebody that's been through the program, but been through what they've gone through. But we also had others that volunteered to be mentors. So to be able to establish that and set that up would be huge. So that's what I got.
That sounds like a wish list that we should make sure hits the budget proposal. All of those activities, I think, will have a significant impact over time in how this community grows and develops.
Good comments, Forrest, and I think those were all good suggestions, Megan. So let me just make sure I captured them all. An apprenticeship program that would include provisions for additional funds to cover business costs, as well as kind of a pre-apprenticeship program with the high school, right? And then kind of increasing the amount of basic business education and overall kind of business discipline and rigor amongst the existing businesses, you know, whether that's a business finance course or however that works. And then in addition to that, kind of an entrepreneurial education support ecosystem to help establish new, younger businesses and support those who are already planning and doing that through the lens of new businesses rather than you know, what an existing business might need. And then an incubator space of some kind that would include a commercial kitchen, support a food purchasing cooperative for local businesses, and then a business mentorship program. Okay, thanks, Megan.
Hey, Megan, I was just going to add that, you know, Jen at the hospital mentioned that, like, you know, we were talking about food for our child care center, and that we could get on her like purchasing plan. They buy a lot of food for the hospital, so maybe that'd be something.
Definitely, for sure.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna keep us moving. Carly. And I'm assuming I'll come back to Carly then if she's doing something else. Mary?
Yes. I want to make sure we continue the grant program, and I'm excited we've kind of started it this year so that we can start it earlier next year, you know, and just be able to not feel like we have to hurry through any of the processes, have a little bit more time. And one of the things I came up, and it dovetails on what a lot of people have said, is finding out what, you know, which would take some time and some way of gathering the information, is determining where the greatest need for skilled workers are. You know, what you know, for example, what do businesses need as far as skilled workers? What do just the community need? You know, do we, you know, because I know everybody complains that if you need an electrician, it's way out and things of that nature. So next year, determining what the needs are, and then do work with USU and the high school to incentivize people going into those type of careers, so that we're helping create careers that are of a very big need in the community. That was one thing I came up with, or it kind of dovetails on what both Megan and John said. And then, you know, just continuing some of the ways we are helping a lot this year with the child care, the housing, you know, and so I get, you know, that was short, but that's pretty much something new. I put down a lot of the stuff that we did this year that I thought was great. And I want to continue and grow on those, maybe rather than throwing another thing into the mix.
That sounds good to me, Mary.
Yeah.
So I've got continue the STAR grant program, implement the workforce opportunity / needs analysis, and then continue the child care and housing priorities. Yes,
and the tourist grants, and take what the committee learned so that it will be more effective.
Okay, I'm going to leave the tourism grants out of it because I'll leave that to the travel council. And
oh, okay, that's the travel council. Okay, but the STAR grants, child care, housing.
Yep,
sounds good. What we've done.
Okay, Karen. I'm ready for your dream project.
Okay, so well, no, I appreciate what Megan had to say. I would definitely, if we were only looking at the rural county, Part A grant, I would definitely up the education grants. And if we are looking at the larger picture of spending TRT money, I would love to figure out how we could offer higher education for our high school students. And so, and that would also be the certificate program. And Megan, I'm just curious, I mean, we've had these discussions about certificate programs through USU as long as I can remember. Is what I'm curious what the holdup is, or what's stopping that. So if we can maybe figure out where that pinch point is to help facilitate that, that would go with what Rob's saying, is trying to get things on the ground that we can move forward with immediately. But again, I think also, just as an advisory group, I would really love to see where the county or the city, and do a partnership, is not utilizing our public assets to be able to do a public-private partnership, like where, maybe the county or the city grants the land and someone builds commercial property. Again, if we're going to expand any sort of commercial enterprises in our community, we have to have the space to do so. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, so I've got two for you, and then Megan hopped off. It looked like maybe her power went off or something like that. So I'll make a note to follow up with her on the hold up with regards to certificate grant program or certificate course programs. But I'm hearing that priority to increase kind of driving our local students to get higher education, whatever that looks like. And then secondly, a priority for public-private kind of partnerships to develop commercial space.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to come back to Carly. All right. I'm assuming Carly is busy solving city catastrophes. So that's I think that's everybody's comments. I guess I'll add mine briefly. I see Rob has his hand up. I'll come back to you in just a second, Rob. So for me, I put, so continue that strategic planning, obviously really important. I think continuing the STAR grant is going to be really important for next year. Continuing getting it done, and then continuing the partnership with USU to hire that SBDC rep at USU Moab through next year. Continuing the childcare and housing priorities. The Canyonlands Business Summit, whether it will remain called that, I think that kind of February gathering of folks engaged in the local economy with a priority to celebrating our wins, getting input on strategiig priorities, and overall just facilitating conversation around all of these important issues. I think it's going to continue to be a really valuable thing that our office does. However, I think that we're going to contract out the event production management piece because it just consumed Ben's life for a month and a half. So anyway, wanting to continue the prioritization of that. Continue to prioritize having an AmeriCorps Vista in our office. And then I added this on the left here on the Rural County Part A side, but the AmeriCorps program allows us to provide a stipend for housing and for food, so long as we pay it directly in various number of ways. But I basically calculated $1,200 a month, $800 a month for rent, $400 a month for food as an additional stipend for a Vista who gets paid $1,200 a month in terms of actual money. So kind of a pilot to see how supporting that kind of a program works, and then hopefully trying to expand that to a larger program, because I think we can all agree that Vistas are highly impactful to the community. And so at least starting with our own Vistas and seeing how supporting that looks like, and then if we expand that kind of region or community wide, I think that would be really good. In terms of new things, I do think that Rob's point about additional staff capacity is well taken and something I'm trying to prioritize. Things that I'm thinking about increasing capacity internally for is kind of data research and insights. We have a ton of data at our fingertips. We're trying to do a lot of database decision making. But really the person who's doing that work is Ben, who has a full-time job as doing all of this program development and management. So hoping to try to increase our capacity internally for kind of the data research piece. And then on the other side, which also, both of these have cross functionalities with the tourism piece, is kind of storytelling, content creation, and the marriage of those two, ideally for me, creating kind of like a monthly newsletter that has what are the programs that we're doing, here's the data that we're seeing, here are some insights, so that we're increasing our stakeholder engagement and having people who have really good copy and production content skills and people who are living in those numbers. And then that'll go towards annual reporting and helping the production of just directors reports and all that kind of stuff. And then additionally program support. So I think that, supplementing Ben's work on developing a lot of these grant programs and just additional capacity for Ben. So those are kind of three: data, kind of storytelling, content creation, etc., and general program development is where I'd like to see additional staff capacity in our office, and I'll continue to work on that through the budget process. And then, have some budget to carry out the priorities of the strategic plan. So whether that's specific or just a placeholder or otherwise, wanting to make sure that we're able to move on those kinds of things. And I think a lot of things that have been suggested might end up being, reinforced by the outcomes of that strategic planning process. So that's me.
Hey, August, can I ask a quick question about data?
Yep.
Where are we with getting visitation numbers? And
Yeah,
where would the funding come for that?
So I think I think what you're pointing to is the exact pain point that we're experiencing, is that we have a lot of this data. For example, we get the STAR report, which has the hotel occupancy rates. We get kind of a handful of other data sources. But really the only capacity we have right now is for Ben to just copy those into charts, and we try to distribute them as often as we can, but we don't have that. That's something we can improve just in general within our internal capacity, but recognizing that we end up being pulled in a million different ways. We don't have anybody dedicated to living in those numbers, comparing them to other markets, coming up with kind of trend reports and working with like Love Communications to say, here's kind of an authoritative, neutral, data-driven outlook of what we're seeing compared to the past and based off of our future goals. So we do have data, and we're trying to distribute it more far and wide, I suppose. So we can make sure that we send out what we have right now. But we really just don't have the capacity to like really get into the insights. We can share the exact numbers, but don't quite have the time to sit and sift and get those insights at a detailed level.
I'm not being critical, but so how was Elaine able to get that information out so readily and so often?
I think she just prioritized it, honestly. So, I think part of it is just, I have not prioritized it at the end of the day. And so I can take some of that for sure.
Well, is there an,
but
I was just curious if there's is there an app where, because I know there's discussion about that too in the past, where we can get just, because I know credit card numbers are one thing, but real visitation numbers off of Main Street or, have we looked into that?
Yep. So Marion, I'll let you make a comment if you'd like in just a second. But there's kind of two data platforms that we are either contracted with and trying to improve, get it usable, or we're in the middle of getting stuff through the county legal. But basically there's an internal dashboard software called Zartico that compiles all of this information in one place for us. Elaine used Love for this kind of service. And then there's an external dashboard that we are trying to onboard called Townfolio, where we can basically have a constantly live, whatever is the most updated information, just embedded on our website and on independent websites, so anybody can look at it at any time and doesn't have to like look through their email inboxes. So we're actively working on both of those. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks,
I
August.
guess-
Sorry, Mary.
I guess what I would comment on is Elaine took a new job not too long after the department was changed a great deal. And she only had to focus on promotion predominantly. And now this same office is really focusing on two pretty big issues, and that's tourism and economic development, without having that much extra staff. It's almost like it's two departments. And so I wouldn't put so much, you know, yeah, you didn't prioritize it, August, perhaps, but you had a lot more on your plate.
Fair enough. I'll take that. I'll take that out. Thanks, Mary. Okay, so I think that gets us a good starting point for today's conversation. And so I think probably, okay, sorry, I just didn't realize Megan's in the waiting room. I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 second. I think probably the most useful next step here is to try, I'm gonna try to just put those into the documents that I discussed just a second ago, that are something we can actually vote on and discuss. And for rural county grant, we need to have actual numbers, but for the TRT numbers, I think just a list of priorities is useful, and we don't have to attach actual numbers to it. So I think what I'm going to do is let me just pull up both of those docs here on my screen. Sorry, I'm trying to do a lot at once. All right, can I ask for just a quick 2 minutes to just kind of put that information that we just discussed into these documents, and then we can take a look at them? I'm gonna say yes to myself. So just give me 2 quick minutes. I'm just gonna mute myself for a moment.
You can chat, message him directly.
Oh, I don't. Oh, well, you can tell me generically.
He could.
Hey, Ben, are you there? Can I ask you a quick question about the STAR grants?
Yeah.
Did any of the larger nonprofits in town, like ones that have, a few employees or more, apply for any of those?
Let's see. There there were some of those. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just thinking that like we should give them opportunities to say, come up with some ideas for, if you guys had extra cash or money, what things could help your constituencies and so forth that are economic development related. Just make sure that they're like, we reach out to them. But if they already know about this, the STAR grant's probably perfect.
Yeah, that's actually something I haven't put together, but now you're making me think about it, that I'll totally put together before the end of the week, because it's super easy, is the portion of nonprofits versus for-profit applicants that we got. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but with about 52 applications, it was definitely probably skewed towards nonprofits. I think that they're probably neck and neck,
Wow,
if not
okay.
maybe a little more than half the applicants were nonprofits. So I'll get back to you on that. It's a great question, but my feeling is that they had a pretty good showing for applying to this round.
Usually how they fund too is through grants. A lot of nonprofits are just eligible for more grants overall than other types of entities.
Yeah, and I'll let Megan speak to this, but you know, I wonder if Megan, did you have different takeaways with when you did your business consults, the nonprofit versus the for-profit personnel that came to you? Because when I had nonprofit folks, they really had grant writing down. It was a lot more about like the kinds of projects, whereas I feel like from business owners, there was a lot of like, I've never done a grant before. I could really use some business technical assistance. And, you know, yeah, like you were saying, Jasmine, nonprofits live in the grant world. But yeah, Megan, if you had like any takeaways.
So the nonprofits are definitely more ready for it and prepared to do it. On that same note, there were several of the nonprofits that this was their first grant. And so I think there was a different mindset with the nonprofits, is that they knew they were going to have to do it. But as far as the know-how, I think it was still a little bit missing. But they were more prepared to do it and knew that they had to put the time in, where business owners, like they were coming in like literally the last minute wanting, and I was booked out and I couldn't meet with them. And so they really struggled that last, but they waited way too long. Whereas the nonprofits were the first in the door, the first one to make those appointments so that they had that time to do it. So I think a lot of it was mindset too.
Yeah, and I love that. And bringing it back to what you were asking about, Rob, you know, I think something that I'd love to see, and Megan, I'd love to talk to you about this more, is how can we sort of target our programs a little more? Maybe, you know, these like larger grant programs are something that we want to use to bring in a lot of the for-profit organizations, whereas these nonprofits in town we've identified could really just fill so many, you know, much needed services. Maybe that's something that we target more, whereas the business grants, we just kind of make it a little more broad. I don't know, but I think it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
And I guess I'll just also add that we're still waiting on for you, Ben, and you can tell it to August, just be that on the storytelling aspect, you know, I think you should look to maybe utilize like the news reporters in town, KZMU. Like there are people that, you know, do that kind of reporting thing, like, you know, in terms of what you guys are working on all the time. So, you know, you could have a page every week in the Sun and the Times and the Real Estate Magazine and whatever, as opposed to like hiring some separate person, or I don't know what your plan was, but just that was it, just to add.
Sorry, for those in the Zoom world, there seems to be something going on where like your messages are default going to me. So I'm getting messages for the group that that was meant for the group. And anyways, Karen had to leave. Apparently it's almost 1 a.m. where she is.
What else do we have in the agenda? We have stuff in the agenda still, or what are we waiting on? I forget.
Well, we gotta allocate some money.
August is collating.
We gotta kind of
Calling
make
us
money
person.
towards all the things.
So I may have missed this when I was on the phone with Christina. Was there a discussion about with the priorities that the board is offering up, how we're deciding on budget request versus rural county grant request, or is it kind of fluid? Sorry, August, if you already went over this.
Just give me 1 second. I'm kind of parsing that out right now.
Okay.
We're just getting the rural county grant application priorities and then discussion and approval of prioritizing the expenditure for the diversification carve out of the TRT.
That's the agenda. think the answer to your question, Ben, was that, it's we didn't really talk about that. It's a bit unclear in terms of like that there's going to be overlap of those two priorities. So
Cool. Just wondering. Sorry, Jasmine, if you just answered that, you were just a little quiet. But yeah, thank you all.
I was just reading him the agenda. That's all.
Love a good agenda read.
It's a nice read.
All right, I think I've captured everything here. Let me pull it up. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, I'm gonna just go over the, okay, Karen's crushing it, amazing. Okay, let's look at the Rural County Grant one first. So basically, kind of capturing the high level priorities that we set forth. So for workforce housing, 90,000, childcare, 90,000, February Summit, 30,000, AmeriCorps Vista, 30,000. So again, much as last year, this is subject to change, but this, I think, captures the spirit of where we're at. It'll give Ben enough to fill an application by the end of the week. We'll get the money and then we can go from there. Does anybody have any strong opinions one way or another on this? And then I'll go to the kind of TRT section to make sure that we're not missing anything. Maybe I'll do that first. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Did we end up spending significantly less on the summit than that?
yes, 10.
We did.
Yeah.
However, so that we ended up net cost about 10 grand. We got 10 grand in ticket sales, 10 grand in sponsorships. So we lost 10,000 on the event. However, I basically want to assume the same, but budget about 20 grand for contracting with an event production team to put the thing on and save Ben a month and a half of his life to send towards these other initiatives. So budgeting the same amount, but basically anticipating that we'll have a contract with an event services coordinator team who Ben and I have a really good contractor who we're planning to work with. We just have to work out details and whatnot. But
and I'll just add, oh, sorry, August, go ahead.
You're good.
I was just gonna say, I'll add that part of we should all keep in mind part of the budget request that won't factor in next time is that county leadership kind of expressed a preference that in future summits we not have like a sponsorship thing. It just makes it a lot easier in terms of like potentially showing favoritism to any business. So while we were like very glad to do that last time, don't think that sponsors will be a part of the equation next time. So we'll be footing more than we did last time, potentially significantly, depending on what shape the event takes.
Or not. Well, that's kind of a conversation. We have to figure that out. But yeah, we had some sponsorship issues last year, and one of the potential remedies was just not having sponsors. But we will, I think, talk that through as we get closer to organizing that. But yeah, otherwise, I think these numbers could go up and down. I think for the purposes of getting something voted on and approved, this feels good to me. Thoughts from anybody else?
I can give more detail on the childcare stuff if people want now, or if we can do that later. I can give update on how things are going and
Well, I was going
new
to say,
ideas,
ask you if you
but-
thought that number was like, but we always change the numbers anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would say-
in the interest of the fact that we have to look at the TRT piece, which is more stuff in it, I'd rather us just take a quick look at that. And we only have 10 minutes left on the meeting. So let's do that. So I put on, this is a much longer list, but this basically captures everything else we've got going on here. This is prioritized. So in order of priority, top number A being the at the moment, I mean, I didn't prioritize it that much, just try to capture everything in here. So in the last letter we had, salaries and overhead for the department being the #1 priority. I put in here additional staff capacity with a focus on the things that I mentioned above. Strategic planning being the third. This is kind of a catch-all. I don't know if we need, well, anyway, implementation of the recommendations of the strategic plan, continuing the STAR grant, making sure we have match for Rural County grant, the money for the SBDC partnership, the workforce development programs that Megan was talking about, an apprenticeship program, the workforce opportunity and needs analysis that Mary suggested, the education support that Karen put in there, the business development that Megan put in there as well, entrepreneurial program, business mentorship, basic business education, the commercial space development concept with the incubator space, commercial kitchen, and additional affordable commercial space in general. Did I miss anything? I think that captured everything that people commented on.
In that list, I don't see childcare.
Well, because the childcare is in the Rural County grant side.
Okay.
So this is explicitly just for TRT, economic diversification TRT.
August, I would just, this is Forrest.
Yep.
I would just suggest that you add a single add to the apprenticeship. Just say apprenticeship and OJT on the job training. Megan spoke to the challenges of setting up apprenticeship programs, but on the job training is also, if it's structured, can accomplish much of the same thing, especially for those trades that do not require special certification.
Awesome.
In August.
Yep.
And I would like to just see, like, in our commercial space development, that we definitely prioritize water conservation when we're doing stuff like that.
What I'm thinking, where we're at, given the time constraints on the day, I would suggest, I think that we formally approve what's on the Rural County grant list today, and that way Ben can move forward with the application. And then for the other piece, we have a little bit more time. So the Travel Council Board is going to meet on October 11th. My recommendation would be that I take a look at this and kind of prioritize this when I have a bit more time, and then call like a half an hour special meeting sometime next week to review that and give a final approval that then can go to the Travel Council Board. Anybody feel comfortable just moving ahead and approving what we have here, like contingent on like me and Ben working on it and sending an email back that it looks good to people? That's maybe what I would recommend. Thoughts in general?
I also have a little note on the Rural County grant application, but go ahead, Rob, or whoever was about to say something. Oh, sorry.
Yes, though, Ben, but not me.
Okay.
I know, right?
Ben, you have a note on the Rural County grant?
Yeah, so my plan is to have, since it's due on Saturday, my plan is to have the draft done by end of day tomorrow, probably more like 3 p.m. and then submit Friday around 3 p.m. So I can absolutely send out the draft tomorrow. As soon as I'm done, folks can make comments and I can incorporate and edit it Friday morning. So if people are really interested in being part of that, I will send out the draft and they can put comments on it or not. And we can workshop it a tiny bit before it goes, and just so everyone can see a bit of it.
Man, I
sounds
wish
good
I
to
wrote
me.
that fast.
What, say that again, Megan?
Man, I wish I wrote grants that fast. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, Megan, I think you probably write harder grants, the rural county grant, and whoever's listening in the governor's office, I don't mind this, but it's on the easier side. And I think the report at least didn't have a character limit. So you know, that kind of helps out. But we'll see
All
about
right,
this.
so I'm gonna entertain some motions here, if that's all right. Our only voting members are Forrest and Rob. So, but our bylaws allow us to, that should be fine. So I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve the 2023 prioritized list of expenditures for the Rural County Grant Program. Period.
I will make a motion to approve the allocation for the rural county grant funds for 2023. Is that good enough?
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 You don't get a vote. Feels so important.
Forrest, I didn't hear
You, buddy.
I just said I second Rob's motion.
you. Oh, I called for a vote.
Huh?
I called
Say
for a
aye.
vote.
If you want to.
I'm trying to influence him.
Oh, I'm influencing votes.
Are you asking me to vote, August?
Yeah, I called for a vote. I
I'm
said
for
all
it.
in favor say aye.
All for it.
Okay, so that's a unanimous for all voting members present, Rob Walker and Forrest Rogers. Let's take a look at this document here. My gut instinct is I want to look at this a little bit more and have a follow-up next week. But if people feel good about Ben and I's ability to kind of move this around a little bit, I will send out an email next week with a kind of a final version and make sure that I kind of get a straw poll approval on that. And I'll bake that into the motion that I entertain, if that sounds good to people.
Yeah, that's good. Just a little thing tidbit, August, before I forget, on the commercial kitchen stuff, I think it's a cool idea. And, you know, YGP has a commercial kitchen that they do rent out to people. So I've been there, was in there recently. I mean, it needs some work. A little bit of money would go a long way. $a few $1,000s would go a long way in that kitchen. And it's already a cool space. They have the infrastructure to like manage people renting it for like a very nominal fee. So that'd be a way we could implement that.
Cool. Noted. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the prioritized list of expenditures for TRT money dedicated to economic diversification activities for 2023.
I make a motion to approve the list of 2023 priorities for economic diversification for TRT money.
And I will second Rob's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passed unanimously. Rob Walker and Forrest Rogers voting in the affirmative. I will send both of these out for just final review to make sure that we're not missing anything before it goes forward in the process. With that, we made it 1 minute under the meeting. We're at the end of our agenda. Thank you all so much. I hereby adjourn this meeting and have a happy afternoon.
Feels like evening, doesn't it?
It is evening,
I guess
technically.
5 o'clock,
5 o'clock is evening.
It's 5 o'clock in the evening, yeah.